Hey everyone, this is the LEGO Dragon Boat Race set. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly and just show you all of the major features here and all of the figures. Then I'll come back and take a more detailed look at a few things in particular and tell you really what I think about the whole set. If you're not at all familiar with dragon boats, they are in real life very much like this. They are thin, narrow, and very long, basically rowboats that are used for racing. They were started in China, and they're most famously known for a yearly Dragon Boat Festival, but people train on them pretty much year-round, weather permitting, and also races occur in various places at different times of the year as well. The boats depicted in this set are particularly traditional, almost ceremonial, and very ornate as a result. Nowadays, in real life, many of the ones that are actually raced are really trimmed down, slimmed down, and don't have the nice animal head that's fully carved up and built up and painted as well at the front, in addition to a nice tail to go with it at the back. But I very much appreciate the inclusion of this sort of style. It just looks so much better, of course, than something that's more function over form. This does use some stickers, some long stickers along the sides to give it that dragon scale look. You can leave those stickers off if you absolutely hate stickers at all. It doesn't really affect the overall look too much, just adds in some extra detail to put it on. And there is the tail. I'm glad that they brought in some contrasting colors as well. They didn't just go with a single color or even two. And that's bright green there, used for the feathers, if you will. The crew complement on a real dragon boat, like with this model, consists of a drummer up front who keeps time and is the person who's essentially conducting the athletic performance, who's responsible for setting the timing for everyone and controlling their speed, and when they are going to hold their speed in the middle and when they have bursts of speed. It's all down to this person who's really directing everything. And then you have a person steering the boat at the back, a helmsman, and then you have a bunch of just oar people who are paddling. Here we have just 3 per boat. On a real one, you'll have 20 typically on a full complement on a full-sized boat. Here's the other boat, and this is mostly the same build as the one we just saw, with color substitutions and lots of them. This is actually a more colorful boat, but the figurehead for this one, the dragon head, is a slightly different build. When you get down to very ornate boats like this that are used for really high-end events and displays, you will usually see a lot of very different styles. It's an art form to carve these up. A lot of them are done by hand. They may use some power tools nowadays, but it's a very traditional art. To encourage actual play with these Lego models, the designer included real wheels on the bottoms of these because they do not float, and most people are not going to be trying to put these in water anyway or play with them around water. So they just have wheels on the base so that they can roll back and forth very easily. So you can just have your own simulated race wherever you want. There's not a lot of variation from crew member to crew member within a given team. They all share the same outfits, so the same torso, hip, and leg prints. They just change up the faces, the heads, and also the hair pieces. They're all black, all kind of similar in length as well, but just with different styles for each. And each team also has a 5th member. These are the drummers for the 2 teams, and with these 2 side by side, you can see the differences between their outfits. They are basically the same designs, just mirrored, with the sash being on the opposite side for either team, and otherwise they're just color swaps. And again, there are different faces and different hair pieces used between each member of each team. Here are the rest of the crew members for the red boat, and it looks like one guy is working much, much harder than the others. That is not a good sign, because it basically means the others are kind of slacking off. Everybody should be drenched in sweat if they're actually in the middle of a race. Here on the left is a race official, possibly the race commissioner, who would be involved with the start and finish of the race and certifying the winner. In the center is the person who runs the food stand in the set, and on the right is just a kid who can be doing whatever you want. Kind of humble prints around the backs of these, but they seem appropriate. And lastly, here are just a couple of enthusiastic spectators with flags to represent the team that they're rooting for. These are pretty straightforward people who can definitely be placed in any sort of scene. They're not at all restricted to use with this Dragon Boat Race set, and they both look pretty good as just normal people. I want you to see the rest of that print there as well. This set also features a pretty substantial dockside build with 3 sections. This first area is a food stand, and particularly it's kind of a fast food stand, a traditional fast food stand that specializes in a type of leaf-wrapped sticky rice with other stuff in it called songzi. Forgive me, I am a Westerner. It's not the type of term that's easy for us to pronounce, but they actually did 2 different prints or 2 different printed pieces for the food itself. So you can see some in the dark tan that are just hanging up over here to act partly as a kind of an advertisement that, hey, this is what's sold here. And then you can see another one there. We've got some of the basic leaves. These would be banana leaves in real life, just lined up there. And then you can also see inside they've got a couple that are done in green, which is a little bit closer. I personally think that the dark tan is good for some of them, but for ones that aren't cooked yet, maybe dark green would have been better than the normal green color. The middle area is just, part of a pier, part of a dock. So it's just a place where people will be walking back and forth if they want, or they can just stand there and cheer on their favorite teams. Looking over to the right, well, this is an elevated area, and you can see the suggestion of the water level there. And there's some plants and also a small frog who's hanging out. And up above, this is the officiating stand. More stickers used right there. No stickers used up top with a nice colorful front. It's just nicely ornate. They use some hot dog pieces in there to good effect just for the shape. And there's an official, and there's also a trophy back there to be awarded ultimately to the winner of this racing series. Also included are a couple of buoys to set out in the water to mark the start and or finish line. Looking at all the components of this set together, it really makes a complete scene. It's everything that you need to get into the spirit of a dragon boat race. Whether you're just going to be putting this out on display, which looks really good, and there are different ways that you can pose things up to take up more or less space, or if you actually want to get in and actually play out some races with the boats that are delightfully easy to move around, to slide around on a hard surface especially. And there's a great amount of realism with how they set up each boat. There appears to be enough space to put in a bunch more figures. You do have to be a little bit careful about the alignment, but I think you can actually double the number of oarmen here. Speaking of oarmen, it is a little bit awkward to me that there are no female figures on the boats whatsoever. I don't know if that's a cultural thing. I'm not going to judge too hard. I know that in America, amongst the traditional Chinese festivals here in America, in areas that have a large Chinese population, it's not like this. You don't have a lot of male-only crews. Sure, there will be some, and there will be some female-only crews, but for the most part, people just mix things up quite a bit, and there's not a tremendous amount of bias there as to who wins. It all comes down to training, and how much training you've put in, and how good your cardio is, and how well synced your team is together to really follow the timing well and all, and how good of a drummer you have, how good of a helmsman. It all comes down to skill. It's a really cool thing. I personally have trained on a dragon boat. I never actually made it into the final race at the end. Just some personal stuff came up, but it's high intensity. It's really thrilling. It's really exhilarating, and it's amazing how fast these things can go with everybody in time. If everybody has been training together well and they're seated properly where everything just clicks, gosh, the acceleration every single time you go through a propulsion stroke is incredible. I mean, you can really feel the G-forces. It's impressive, and they do things to manage your cardio and your stamina, where you'll put in a little bit of extra effort. You'll go up to a 75%, and then you'll put in a 90%, and at the end, of course, you want to put in absolutely everything at the very end, but they go through these levels that step, and it's really cool. And there's strategy involved in everything, and this totally captures all of that for me as someone who has dabbled in it. Between these two boats, I personally like the color scheme. Just personally, I like the color scheme of this one a little bit better. I really appreciate the inclusion of the bright green in there. That stands out so much. The bright green, a little bit of lime green works too, but the bright green and the red, the yellow, and the dark red as well, that really helps. I personally, I think that for the forehead of the dragon, I like this car piece that they used here. I like how rounded that is, but I don't like the telephone nose, the nostrils there. Let me actually try something. I'm just curious about this. I hadn't tried it up to this point. It's supposed to have nostrils there. I just wonder if that doesn't look more appropriate, to have the holes facing forward. Maybe not. Let me know what you think about that. But I do think that this stands out a little bit. Maybe if this was available in a different color that didn't stand out quite as much, it might look a little bit better. Oh yeah, the mouths can be opened and closed. That's entirely up to you. You do want to keep the head up because you don't want it to be getting down in the water. But you can bring this down if you want for some reason, or just, start to imagine this whole thing coming to life and flying away. Kind of looks like the dragon from Never-Ending Story, which is inspired by the Chinese dragon style or the Asian dragon style in general. You can change the posing of the tail a little bit, flay out these tail feathers just a bit, just a slight difference from boat to boat in the design back there with just the type of barb piece here. But overall, this is pretty good. The only thing that I really don't like in terms of realism or lack thereof with the boats is that with the figures, you're not able to grasp the paddles, the oars properly. You're able to only hold them with one hand per figure. If you try to put them into two hands, then they're going to be going out to the side, and that's not how these work at all. In reality, you actually have your paddles practically vertical, and you chop down into the water and pull back. It's a chop and straight, so they're almost straight out. They're not out like in more European style of rowing styles, just in general. But that's definitely a nitpick. You can definitely set these things up again to capture the essence of dragon boat racing. And then just to get back to this here, so many Lego sets have side builds that really feel like side builds. They feel like extras. They feel like things that are added in to either pad things in a little bit or just provide a little bit of extra potential to get you started with some imaginative play. And this doesn't feel like just a side build. This feels integral. It feels like there's enough here, and it all makes so much sense that it adds a lot to the set. It's a little bit spindly, but it's appropriate. It has a nice amount of detail, but not too much. Not too much with the added on ornate detailing and the colors and everything, the banners. It kind of feels like a lot of that stuff is just added on at the time of the festival, which is exactly how this would work. This would be space that's actually used throughout the part of the year when the festival isn't on, and there aren't a lot of people coming around to watch and everything. So this just totally makes all the sense in the world to me. I like the build for it. It actually makes sense in how it went together as well. And yeah, it adds a lot, and I really appreciate the inclusion of two different, they didn't need to do two, they only need to do at least one, but two different printed part numbers there for the Zongzi. And again, apologies if I butchered that a little bit. These are the spare parts left over after you build everything, and this is a really, really nice selection to have as extras because there are a lot of useful and interesting and pretty special pieces included in here, with one each of the two colors of the printed cheese slope parts. So that's just great for extras that are left over. This is a pretty delightful and well done set, if you ask me. And the biggest positive surprise is the price. $50 US for 643 pieces. And a set that includes how many there? 15 minifigures? Yeah, the torsos are shared. Basically the entire body is shared across each team, but still it's 15 minifigures. Those are more valuable than the number of pieces that they include typically. I just think that the value here is very good. Looking at the set off to the side, built in person, I feel like the price to volume of stuff ratio is proper here. I think that's what they did best. Just going by the number of parts or something like that, and then kind of factoring in the extra value of minifigures, they easily could have priced this much, much higher. But they didn't. I feel like they priced it fairly for the amount of stuff that you get here. This does have a fair number of small pieces for little decorations and things, but not too many of them. Not so many that it feels like the number is completely out of alignment with what goes into this and what you end up with when you fully assemble it. So overall, I just can't complain much about this at all. My points of critique are only on very, very small, nitpicky type things. Check out one of my build videos if you'd like. I've done one in real time and one as a speed build. I will link to both of those on their respective channels at the end of this video, which is right now. Thanks for watching.